Welcome to Drawing the Bible. I'm Steve Thomason, and it is 2 p.m. here at Central Time, and welcome to my studio. I go live every Thursday and invite you into my studio to join me as I do some live art. This summer, I'm working on a big project where I'm illustrating the book of Acts as a graphic novel. And I take 1 hour out of each day on Thursday to just let you see the process. So I should be live, if everything's going correctly, I should be live on YouTube and Facebook in 2 different locations. And I'm trying different things every week. And what I'm finding out right now is that I don't have my chat box. I can't find my chat box. So give me a second, everybody. And in just a second, I'm going to see where my chat boxes are and view my, let's see. Let's see. Do I have chats? I sure hope I do, because it was just so much fun last week to have people chatting with me. And let's see, am I on? I hope so. I don't know where my chat boxes are. I'm going to check on YouTube and just see if I'm live. So good to have you all with me. And hold on one second. My videos, I'm going to my live videos to see if I'm on there. And live right now, and I am live. I'm live, but I can't figure out how to get my chat boxes up. And that's not a good thing. So hold on one second. There we go. Controls, streaming, settings. I should have my chat boxes. We go to Restream, see if my chat boxes are there. Boom. Done. Aha! Sandy Olson, Steve and friends. Excellent. I see a chat from Sandy Olson on there. Excellent. That's cool. Well, let me just keep this open at least. Yeah, Sandy's on YouTube. Excellent. Okay, I found how to get my chats up, folks. Thanks for sticking with me there. I'm learning. One of the things about going live is you got to be willing to look kind of stupid. I'm kind of used to that. Just ask my kids. Excellent. So here's what I want to do for you before we jump in. We're going to do some fun. We're going to do some painting today because that's the big section I'm in. I've penciled 43 pages of Acts, and now I'm going through the process of painting them. And my goal is to get 5 pages painted every week for 9 weeks, and I'll be able to get it all done. So last week I finished my 5 pages, and I just want to show you the pages. So if you go over to cartoonistbible.com/Acts or hover over Explore Bible and click on Acts, you can see that there's an interactive outline of the book. And I have done pages 1 through 5. They're done. So let me just click on it real quick for you. This is page 1. We got Jesus ascending, telling his disciples that they will be witnesses in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the ends of the earth. And then poof, he disappears, and the angels show up and go back to Jerusalem, hang out, wait for it. And so they go back to Jerusalem. They're praying, they're waiting. Here's the 12 and the women, and then they need to replace Judas because Judas took his own life, and they choose Matthias. And then on page 3, we have the day of Pentecost. And the Holy Spirit comes. They have the gift of tongues. They can speak in all these different languages. And the crowd is divided. Some think it's amazing. Some think they're drunk. And then Peter gives this big speech. 3,000 were added to their number. The disciples are doing amazing things. They share everything in common. It's awesome. And then last week, if you were with me in the live session, we painted this panel, these couple panels here. And so I finished that page up. Peter and John are going to the temple. They meet this man who's begging by the side of the gate, and they heal him. And that's pretty awesome. And then he is restored, and Peter gives another big speech. And so here we are today. We come to page 6, and I have inked that page, and now I'm painting it. So let me switch over to my Cintiq workspace, and we can dive into the actual painting process. So I've been working for a little while today. Let me give you context. So now I should have a little bit of music playing, and the whole purpose of this live stream session is just for you to actually watch me do the artwork. So while I'm working, if you have any questions, you can drop those questions into the chat box, or just let me know that you're here. And so we're just going to hang out together. So there will be times when I'm just not talking at all, and you can just enjoy the music. If you can't hear the music, let me know. I'll turn it up for you. So what we've got here is on this first panel, you can see in the lower left of your screen, you can got like an over-the-shoulder shot. This is my Cintiq 16 that I'm working on with my Cintiq Wacom pencil stylus, and I'm working in Photoshop. And so my beautiful bride, Lana, she does the base colors for me. So let me just show you what this looked like when we started this panel. So we turn off all these layers, and you can see I got to come down here and turn on the sketch layer. So I sketched this out on my iPad in an app called Comic Draw, which is a really cool app. And then I bring it over into Photoshop. And so in Photoshop, the first thing that I do is I put this panel in, the lines around the panel, and then I ink the drawing over the sketch. So now I don't need the sketch, so I can come down and turn the sketch off. So now I've got this inked artwork, and this is what Lana gets. And actually I also put some gray in to the background, which I've already colored in. So she takes this and she blocks in basic color for me, and then I've got the basic background. And then I create layers on top of that. I do a shading layer, and then I do a highlighting layer. And that's what I've got done so far. So right now I'm just finishing up a little bit of the highlighting. So I've got my paint box here, bring up my colors. And just before we went live, this is what I was working on. So I'm going to hit some highlights. I do the crowds just as kind of generic figure-like blobs, just to indicate that there's a group of people. Non-specific people, there's a crowd. But you'll notice right here I've got this guy looking back at the religious leaders, just to remind you that this is actually a group of people here. So I've just noticed that I don't have any shading on this guy. So I'll go to my airbrush, I'll come down to the shade, put some shadow in. There we go. A little bit of shade there. And make my brush a little smaller. Give him like dark circles under his eyes. And I need to get this beard a little darker. And sometimes when you do this level of the detail, you can see that in my solid color section, I've got some gaps. So I need to fill those in so you don't see those little white highlights. Like that. Reset my alpha lock, come up here to my highlight layer, and then back up to we go. And choose my This is a blending tool. Sometimes the texture is a little too much. Okay, so there we go. I think we're going to be done with this panel. And then the word balloons go on top of it. So we've got the religious leaders like, hey, you can't do that. And so they arrest. So this panel over here shows that they arrest them. And so in the background, I'm going to take some red with my detail brush, make my detail brush really big, and just emphasize using red as kind of an accent of this was not a great thing that just happened. So let's put that in. I come up here to my shading layer, and I want to get these ropes in here as like brown. But I gotta change my local color. I want the color of the rope. So you got like a solid base color that you build on. So this rope is going to be kind of a, like a tan color. And then come up here to my shading blender. Highlights. There we go. All right. We go back down to my shadow color. Choose my base and then go a little bit darker. Let me get rid of this box for a second. Back to my base color. Just set off those fingernails a little bit. All right, now I'll go back up to my shadow. Get my hairbrush. Just do some basic shading. Bring this down to 30%. Just want to put a little bit of texture in this hand. So if anybody has questions or comments, just want to let me know that you're here. Just drop a chat in the box. I'm happy to entertain questions while I'm drawing or painting here, and that'd be fun. Go up to highlights. And the first thing I do is just hit like a rim light on the edges to make the edges pop out. Go to and then on my shadow, I just want to bring that shadow down a little bit, a little darker in the dark areas. All right, so let's pan out and then bring the boxes over. So there you go. You've got that first panel done. Sweet. Okay, now we're going to go to this set of panels. So right here we've got, let me close these so you can see it a little bit better. Close them, not open them, Steve. Okay. So we've got the next day they're brought to court. They're in front of the council in Jerusalem, like the Sanhedrin, you know. And so I've got Peter in front of the Sanhedrin, the council of leaders of Israel. And so Lana's got these basic things in the background, which is awesome. And so I'm going to get a little bit more stylized with my backgrounds here. Let's close up the panel 1 group. We're going to open up, let's close panel 5. Open up panel 2. You can see we've got the gray background here. And so I'm going to take my big detail brush and make it bigger. Oh, there we go. Make it bigger. I need to alpha lock that. Make that brush bigger. For some reason my brush isn't getting bigger. And I want to make this just a basic like floor color. Get that brush bigger. Brush really big. See, I can be wild like this because I have this layer alpha locked, which means I can't paint outside of the section that already has pixels on it, which is pretty nice. And then I'm going to go down into my reds, and I want to make the background a dark red. So throughout my gospel series, I've used dark reds and blacks as the sign of danger and warning and in Jerusalem. And so I want to keep that going in my Acts story. So let me go ahead and get rid of these word balloons so I can see what I'm painting. I want it to be kind of rough. And then I am going to use this blender just a little bit. There we go. Looks kind of nice. That in. And I'm going to use this rough watercolor to put in some texture. For some reason my keyboard shortcuts broke on me. Let's put some texture here in the background. That texture darker to put some direct shadows underneath these characters. I'll usually end up coming back to that. Then I want to try something. I want to put more of a crowd in the background. There we go. All right, so now I'm going to come to my color layer, alpha lock that, and we're going to make these robes just a little bit white. And again, I can color wildly like this because this layer is alpha locked. And these guys are going to have pretty dark beards. This main guy, though, I'm going to give him kind of a gray beard. And his big throne-like chair. Can you set the sound your brush makes? I can't imagine it actually makes that swishing sound. Ah, Sandy, that's a great question. It is actually making that swishy sound because what you're hearing is the tip of the brush scraping against the glass of the Cintiq tablet. And the microphone is picking up that sound. So, yeah. Is that annoying? Is that bugging you? Sorry. That's funny. Swish, 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 swish. Now I'm super aware of that swishing sound. Oh, that's funny. So Sandy, did you think that that was a sound effect that the program was making? That's really awesome. Nope, just noticed it. Oh, nope, that is not bothering you? Yeah. Well, good. Good observation though, Sandy. And I'm really glad you're watching, Sandy. It's super fun to have you here. I'm just doing this because, you know, you can. And when I'm done with these recordings, if you haven't noticed, on my social media pages, on Instagram and on Facebook and on YouTube Shorts, I've done little 60-second recaps of the session with just the painting part at super fast speed. So everything I accomplish in this hour, I condense it into 60 seconds. And so I have this fun little history of 60-second clips of all of these drawing sessions. So it's just kind of, I'm doing this partly to chronicle the journey of this project, so that on my YouTube channel I will have it forever and for always, as long as the internet stays intact. Okay, let's add a layer. Then I'm going to create a clipping mask from this layer. I'm going to make this layer set to the multiply blend mode. And what that does is it lets me build shadows. And so make my airbrush a little smaller. Yeah, for some reason I have lost some of my keyboard shortcuts, and I don't want to take the time to stop and fix that. So it is kind of annoying, but it's okay. For the purposes of doing this live stream, I don't want to take time to stop and fix that. So I have to manually come over here and change my brush size. Normally, I use a keyboard shortcut of brackets, the square brackets left and right, and that will increase or decrease the size of my brush. But like I said, for some reason that function in my keyboard shortcuts has stopped working. And I don't know if it's because I'm using up resources to do the live stream or what, but it hasn't happened to me before. My spacebar is working. So when you press the spacebar, it creates a handhold so that you can move around on the screen. So let me choose this color and then get a little darker with it. And go to brush. Make my brush a little bigger. And just drop in some shadows under here. That brush a little bigger. Drop some shadows on this robes of these clerics. Let me put in my word balloons so I know what I need to really pay attention to and not fuss over stuff that's going to be covered by word balloons. So one of the themes of the Book of Acts is imprisonment. Every one of our major characters gets imprisoned and or tortured at some level. And it ends, as we go through the story, you'll see that Apostle Paul, who ends up becoming the main character for most of the story, ends up getting imprisoned, and in the whole last section of the book is all about Paul in prison, in various prisons, and how he deals with it. So this shadow color is just a little too intense for me. One of the things you want to not do with your shadows is make everything look really muddy. And I have a tendency to overpaint, so I don't want to do that either. Terry, now, preaching on Acts on Sunday. Excellent. Hey, Terry, nice to see you. What text are you preaching in Acts, Terry? Acts 8. Aha. I'm not that far in painting, sorry. Okay, let's now add the highlight layer. I'm going to create a clipping mask. Terry, I was only hoping. Yep. So let's go to, so this one we make a blending called overlay. And I'm going to go to my gouache detail. Make this brush just a little smaller. And here I do an outline. It's called a rim lighting. And it just sets the figure apart from the background. Cody, hey, Cody's watching. Thanks for watching, Cody. Good to see you. These are my colleagues from Luther Seminary tuning in. Yes, supporting this art adventure. This book, this book that I'm doing here is going to be used for my Acts class that I'm creating for Faith Lead Academy. And so anybody who takes that class will be led through the story of Acts using this illustrated graphic novel. It's very cool. Which currently you can have that experience with the Gospel of Matthew, because my course on Matthew, along with Dr. Christopher Fan Kaufman, uses my illustrated cartoonist guide to Matthew as one of the ways that you can encounter the text of the Gospel of Matthew. So, pretty fun. Trying to use my gifts and passions in visual art and visual communication to help people engage Scripture to grow deeper in the love of God. How's that? Is that a good plug, Terry? You still there? Yeah, thanks, Terry. Awesome. So last week when I was doing this and chatting with people like I'm doing now, it reminded me of back in the day when I was a caricature artist at the amusement park, which I did for 10 years, by the way. Started in Chicago and then went out to Las Vegas to open up the Excalibur and worked with a bunch of fabulous artists over the years. But we would sit out in the public and draw caricatures of tourists. You know, they'd sit down in front of us and we'd draw their caricature, but we'd chat all along the way and people would be standing beside me asking questions, you know, and I learned how to be able to talk to people without stopping drawing, because, you know, in that business, drawing is equal to cash, which is equal to feeding your family. So it was kind of fun to be able to do this experience, to have people asking questions and then also still trying to keep focused in on the drawing. So it's a fun challenge. And for 1 hour a week in the process, it's just fun to do. Okay, let me go back here. Oh, to this brush. Whoops. Didn't want to do that. Back to that. These characters are mostly covered up. So why do I even worry about them, you may be asking? Thanks for asking. Because as I create the PowerPoints, there will be a moment where this is shown on the screen without the word balloons. And so I want it to look somewhat okay. Bye, Terry. Thanks for being here. Boom. Okay, that panel, I think we're going to call done for now. So let's move over to take a little drink. Now we're going to move to the center panel, and where the camera shifts. And so instead of looking over the shoulder of Peter to the leaders, we're going to look at a little close-up of the leaders having a conversation and deliberating what to do. So back color, color. So that's my main color. I need to just fill in one little section. Eyedropper, boom, brush. Zoom in right here. I need to just fill in one little section that didn't get filled in. No big deal. All right. So what we've got going on here is I need to fill in my background. So I'm going to alpha lock that. I'm going to choose this and get back to that. I'm going to get my eyedropper and choose this color. Fill that in. Let me get rid of these word balloons here. Get my color a little darker. Make this brush a little bigger. Get the texture in there. And I am going to just blend that just a little bit. There we go. And then come back over here and grab this color, my brush. fill that in. Get a little bit of darker tone under there. Get my watercolor brush. Give it some texture. Okay. Now, back color are all those folks back there. So let's go ahead and just give them a little shading. So if we choose our base color, then go a little bit darker, I do need to create a new layer, make that, create clipping mask, make that multiply, and then just give them a little shading. So let's zoom in on that. Make my brush a little smaller. See, this is a great example of why you want to do it on multiple layers, because I can color right behind these main figures and not even worry about it. And by making them darker back there, it makes these main characters pop out. But then I can leave the heads of these background figures a little lighter so that they stand in contrast to the background. And that's how that works. Let me just pull this color up into these characters a little bit. Then if I go back down to the panel, just pop in these shadows a little bit deeper. There we go. All right, so if we pull out just a little bit from that, just remember that we have a lot of that. How long have you worked with Photoshop and know all the settings, and how many layers will a typical sheet have on it? Oh, that's a great question, Sandy. I've been working with Photoshop since 2002, so I've learned a lot of things about Photoshop. And the layers typically, like each little panel is its own composition, and so each composition will have at least 4 layers, because you got the background layer for the color, and then you've got the main blocked out color for the characters, then you've got a shading color and a highlighting color layer, so there's 4 layers right there. And then you have the ink layer, so that's 5 layers. And then if you want to get more detailed with things, like in this case, there's a layer for the background, and then there's a layer for the foreground color. So you could have up to like 10, 15 layers just within one little panel, and then multiply that by 8 panels. And like I've had documents where I've had 50 to 70 panel layers in a document, just depending on what you're trying to accomplish. Okay, so in this layer, I want to alpha lock that, and I want to zoom in. And the first thing we're going to do is choose my base layer. And then I want to come down to an almost black. And then I use my gouache detail brush and just fill in the block colors. This is called local color, and it's just flat colors. Not worrying about any shading or anything, because we do the shading on a different layer. And then let me grab my base brown and do John's. Oh, that's right, I don't like that brown. I want to redden up the brown a little bit. Brown is the combination of complementary colors. And so there's lots of different browns in the world. And that first brown just had a little bit too much gray in it, when something has gray in it, it means that you've added black and white, to it, which really brings down the main tone. Okay, so this color is what I've just been using for most of the basic clothing tones. And this character has just kind of a gray outfit. Remember, this is the man that they just healed. His legs were restored, which is why they are in trouble. Isn't that funny? They got in trouble for helping somebody become whole. Not funny, horrible. How's that? All right. So this guy has a gray beard. Let's make that a little bit more gray. Again, these are just base colors. And then their robes are white, but you never paint something white. Very few pure whites exist in the world, and you save pure white for extreme points of highlight. So most whites have lots of colors in them. Because white is actually the presence of all the colors, and black is the absence of all the colors. Some would argue that it's the opposite of that, because black absorbs all the colors and white reflects all the colors. It just depends on glass half empty, half full, I guess. Deep philosophical conversation. So the whites of the eyes would also have a base of gray, and the whites of the teeth would also have a base of gray, like that. All right, so those are the local colors. Oh, I want to put in, I've been putting in like a stripe like this across. I'm not really basing this in historical, archaeological accuracy or anything. But I am trying to create a distinction between the Sadducees and the Pharisees, because that becomes really important later in the story. Okay, so that's my base color. So now I'm going to create a new layer and do create clipping mask, multiply, back to my airbrush. We're going to do some basic shading here. Again, by creating that clipping mask, what that means is that you have locked the pixels of this frame to the pixels directly below it. So I am not actually painting on the colored layer. I'm painting on a layer above it, so I'm not damaging those pixels, but I'm constrained to those pixels so that I don't color outside the lines. Even though I'm a guy that does like to color outside the lines in certain contexts, metaphorically, I don't really like to color outside the lines in this context because, as my students know, my favorite saying is context is everything. Ba-ba-boom. And I'll come back with highlights in a second. But here we can use that same size brush, but now it becomes a detail brush because, again, context is everything. What was a gigantic brush in one context is actually a fine detail brush in another context. Just check something here. Yep. Now I'm going to go over here to more of a dark gray. Put shadows on the mustache. I don't want that brown color. And this beard is darker. Maybe he's younger. Just making this up. We do know that the high priest was a family dynasty of Annas and Caiaphas and Alexander. Now this, I don't get super detailed. My goal here is not to have a fully rendered, beautiful piece of art. My goal is to create a cartoon that will give enough, oops, that is not what I wanted to do. It will give enough information to tell the story and be visually interesting. Oh, that's because I'm on multiply. Okay, now I'm going to add a layer and create the highlight layer. Create clipping mask. Create overlay. This part, to me, I think is where the magic really happens. Come up here to white. So once you start popping in those highlights, things start really taking on a dimensionality to them. Even in simple cartoons. So I hit it with a rim light like that. And the cool thing about this overlay layer is that even though I'm using the same color, it picks up the color underneath it and blends with it. So you can get variation in your highlights without having to change your color for every little section, which just speeds up the process. It doesn't like to do lights over real darks, so you have to adjust. Sometimes if I really want to do highlights over a dark spot, I have to create a new layer to do that. But again, I'm trying to discipline myself to be simple here. So let's focus in on the background, guys, and then I think we'll be done for today. Well, done with my live stream. I still got tons and tons of work to do. I will be painting the whole rest of the day. Yeah, see, this is going to be a good example. I'm going to, in just a second, I'm going to create a new layer so that I can just do a little bit of highlight on Peter's hair to help it stand out against the dark background, and John's hair as well. And these characters are really small in the background, so I don't need to do too much detail or fuss too much with it. Just let them stand out. But I am going to create a new layer, and I'm not going to attach it to anything, and just make my brush really small, not that small, and just do a little rimlet. All right, there we go. So we've got there in the background. I'm just going to show you one last thing before we're done for today. I'm going to create another layer that is it's called an add layer. I'm going to choose the pixels of my background layer, which creates a mask. I'm going to put this above my ink layer, and then choose my airbrush. This big like that. And I'm just going to put some lighting over the background to kind of soften it, and then bring down my opacity quite a bit, and then that kind of just softens the background a little bit, ties those harsh black lines so that the foreground pops. Yeah, well, there you go. I think that's probably a good stopping place. Let me transition over to intro. Hey, thanks for sticking with me. I noticed I had a few people on throughout the whole time, and Sandy, you stuck with me the whole hour. That's awesome. Glad that I could be your background noise for an hour while you're doing such important work at the seminary for all of us. And thanks for joining me in this hour of Drawing the Bible. And again, you can go to cartoonistbible.com/acts, ACTS, and check back each day and see what progress I've made, because as I finish a page, I will post it to that, and we can watch. It's kind of like an advent calendar as each of those panels gets filled in with fully colored pages. So, all right, thanks for joining me, and